everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me. Recently I shared a tutorial on using freezer paper and how you can use freezer paper with different mediums to not only reuse them over and over again and protect your work surface. So I wanted to show you how I've ended up making the projects that I featured within that video and then how I finished them off to make some cards. So the first technique I want to show you is with alcohol inks. Alcohol inks are all the rage right now, and I'm going to be putting a few of the alcohol ink colors that I had here on the screen onto the freezer paper itself. Now the freezer paper is a slick surface, so it's going to be able to reactivate those alcohol inks because they're not absorbing into any paper. I'm going to put alcohol blending solution onto those alcohol inks to get them to be reused. And my favorite technique of all alcohol ink techniques is the smooshing technique. It's much like ink smooshing if you've ever done that with, say, distress inks, but this time you're using alcohol inks and you're getting some amazing results when you do this. I had so much fun taking this glossy paper and smooshing it into the alcohol ink to get these really abstract and different looking backgrounds. When I make alcohol ink backgrounds, I really like to play around and see what kind of effects I can get by layering additional colors on top. And that's one of the awesome things about working with alcohol inks is that you can continually add more and more layers if you don't like how it's looking. So it's really fun to be able to see what kind of results you can get with the alcohol inks. It's always different. You can never recreate the same thing over and over again. Now, another fun product in the alcohol ink line, and by the way, these inks and alcohol ink products are all from Ranger and Tim Holtz. But one of the other fun things about alcohol inks are the mixatives that you can get that are metallic. I'm using the silver in most of my cards here. I've tried to make some marbling looks with the alcohol ink mixatives, and that's really a fun way to be able to get some cool and intense results. That alcohol blending solution that you've seen me apply down over the mixative, that helps break it down and get it to move because they are highly concentrated. And the other thing that I want to mention here is that you're seeing me add alcohol ink onto this piece of paper from the second generation of the paper that I was creating before. So that really intense paper that we had created, this is those same alcohol inks that were left over on my freezer paper and reused by reactivating them with alcohol ink blending solution and creating another generation of those same alcohol ink colors that were sitting on my freezer paper. This is the third generation, and I ended up not really loving how this one looked in the beginning. But that's, like I said, the fun thing about alcohol inks is that they become something really unique and amazing the more you work with it. So this background right here, at this point I was like, oh man, I need to get rid of this one. But then I was like, okay, well, let's add some alcohol ink on there and see what happens. So I'm intensifying the color and adding more on there because I didn't really get too much in the way of those purples and teals. It was all kind of blending into a light pink. So I'm bringing in more of those colors and really just dropping a ton of it on here. And as I'm doing so, it's reactivating the mixative. So that's breaking down the mixative even further and pushing it around, and it's creating these really cool, almost marble-like effects, which I've loved. I like to tilt the paper a little bit and to get those alcohol inks moving even more. Now I've got another technique for you that I did making alcohol inks move. A lot of people like to use straws, but I prefer to have a little bit more control over it. So I like using a metal palette knife. And so I take that palette knife and I smear it into the alcohol inks and getting it to move around onto my paper and putting it in different areas. Now you can create even more texture by pouncing and dipping it into color and then dropping it onto the paper itself. That creates another really cool effect. But in this particular case, I just smeared it. And then I added more blending solution on there, and that creates these really cool horizontal marble lines, or vertical, depending on how you orient the paper. So alcohol inks work really well on this freezer paper, and that's one of the things I really love about it. Now, another fun thing I did with freezer paper is that I used it for ink smooshing. And you might remember this in the video as well, but now I'm going to show you everything that I did here. In this particular case, I'm taking the inks and I'm smooshing them down onto the freezer paper and then spritzing them with water to get them to reactivate. So that's creating bead-like areas of that ink, and that's what's going to allow the ink to create a really nice smooshed effect on our paper. In this particular case, I'm using watercolor paper, and this is a very smooth hot press paper, so it's going to give me a really nice finish on this paper. There's no texture to interfere with the ink smooshing. I'm doing a second generation with that ink. I've not applied any new ink, and I even did a third generation, and you'll see all three of those generations throughout this portion of the video. As I'm putting down the color, I'm not using tons of water because I don't want the ink to be moving too much. I want to preserve some of that intensity, and I also don't want it to blend completely. So I am using a conservative amount of water, but using just enough to get the inks to move. Now these backgrounds turned out fabulous, and I love that you can get so many unique and different results just by reusing that ink and getting it on your paper. So you can see that third generation as well. Very different from the first, but yet they all look beautiful. So I made a whole bunch of panels. There are literally bunches of these sitting in my craft room now. And I wanted to be able to do something with them. So I decided I was going to create some cards using this awesome Neat and Tangled heart die. This is a really fun die that cuts out some hearts, but it also cuts only half of a heart, which lets you fold them over to create another heart. And I really love that. It's an oldie but goodie. I started making a whole bunch of these, and you can see the end result that I got. And it's really easy to put these together. So I'm going to show you how. I took the die and I ran all of these panels that I made, and there are more than what you see right here. These are just some of the panels that I made. So basically, I'm taking some foam tape and I'm adding that to the backside of each of the half cutout hearts and then folding them over. There's a score line that gets put onto that half heart when it goes through the die cutting machine, and then that allows you to fold this over super easy. On some of the cards, I popped up that entire panel off of my card because I love dimension. So I added a bunch of foam tape to the backside of some of these, but you totally don't have to. Here's another card that I did using just some score tape on the backside. So this is going to be a very flat card. The only dimension that there is on this card is the fact that I added the foam tape to the backside of the hearts themselves, the fold over hearts. But otherwise, this is a totally flat card. I added color panels in behind some of these, but then on other cards, I just used either some subtle glitter paper or some shimmer paper. In one case, I even used some foil paper. And I added these all onto card bases. Now, in some cases, I added sentiments to them, but in other cases, I didn't. And that was because I wanted to be able to use these cards for things when I know I needed a card. So I have the cards ready to go. The only thing I need to do now is add the sentiment. So if I have a birthday coming up and I need a birthday card for somebody, I can go ahead and throw a birthday sentiment onto one of these cards. Or if I need a sympathy card or a thinking of you, I've got the cards already made, and I can go ahead and add sentiments onto those, and they can be popped in the mail really easily. So that was why I left some of these plain. And you can see pictures of all of these finished cards along with the products used over at my blog. So I hope you'll go check that out. But I had a bunch of fun creating with these. And it was so much fun to be able to take those backgrounds and turn them into cards and see them come to life. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and got some inspiration on using alcohol inks or distress inks or freezer paper or the Neat Tangled die. Whatever you saw in this video, I hope it inspired you and that you will stop by again soon for another video tutorial. Until then, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!